It's June 12th, 2017. Welcome to Let's Talk Native on the LTN Radio Network. This program breaks all the rules for Native radio. No buffalo speeches, no mistake healing, no special Indian prayers. We tackle the real issues facing Native people with a look back at our glorious and our grave history. A tough look at where we're at now, and look forward to our ongoing battles for sovereignty and autonomy. Let's Talk Native is produced in association with Iroquois Promotions on the LTN Radio Network, streaming live from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation, and simulcast and rebroadcast on the Gwe at CKWE in Tandanega. You can find us at www.ltnradionet.com. That's where you can hear crystal clear audio of great tunes like Janine from Pappy John's band, the song we opened with. I'm John Kane. I am the show's host and producer, and of course I got Matt here on the board as usual. All right, good to have Matt. Ed's out for the evening. We'll catch up with him the next broadcast. Wouldn't be surprised if we have a guest or two walk in the studio during our broadcast today, but we'll do it with what we got here. Of course, we've got Jake Proud behind the camera and off mic. Just shooting some video for our LTN, our Let's Talk Native TV YouTube channel. And we will post this show off of his video probably the next day or so. And, of course, we are Facebook live streaming right now, as well as streaming on our own network on the Unity Stream, Apache Radio Net, and the LTN Radio Network. So I want to... again, thanks, Jake. I also want to give a shout out to Kelly McMillan, our studio engineer, for helping us with the equipment that we have here and for being on call when we have trouble. Hey, that opening song, like I said, it was Janine from Pappy John's band, and it's always good to hear some of that classic sound that comes from so many of our artists. We've been kicking this idea around, and we're thinking about trying to launch off of our network here. A blues show, just maybe start with a half hour, but make it a 1 hour show that will just feature Native artists singing the blues. Not necessarily blues artists, because we know that so many of our artists, perform in mixed genres that they might be country one day and blues the next. All right, what's going on?
No, I better not.
Well, and of course we've got folks like. Like Pure Fay, who, is like a classic jazz singer, and yet she can sing the blues with the best of them. So, so we're thinking about putting a show together. And I'm not sure which night we'll air it. Maybe we'll open that up for discussion and look for suggestions here on Facebook and anywhere else anybody wants to weigh in. Which night would you like to hear this network carry a 1 hour blues show? I guess that's like a polling question to throw out there. So, but that's something we're considering and looking at possibly a couple of other shows. Matt got one. He's cooking up that'll be a little bit more culturally oriented, and that may go. We're thinking about a Wednesday night for that, since we're already doing a Monday and a Friday show. So we got other plans for what we've got built here and what we plan to do with it. So stay tuned. And of course, we will continue to expand our use of our YouTube channel. Let's Talk Native TV, and we'll be posting, like I said, shorter videos and other clips from the show. Not just complete shows, but clips from the shows as well. A couple of other video projects we're working on. Maybe we'll even expand that to show us develop into video shorts that are more dramatic in effect, not just commentary and my talking head, so to speak. Hey, look, a couple of things. Before the show, I made it out to a public hearing on Buffalo School District's Native American program, and there's probably 500 to 550 Native students enrolled in the Buffalo School District. Actually, a smaller number than I thought there was, but it's actually, that number's up from last year. Out of that 500 plus students, there is, let me just say, there is one magnet school. There is a Native American school in the Buffalo School District. It's Public School 19. I've had the privilege to go there a number of times. Actually, I think for the last 3 or 4 years, I've gone out there each year during when they're celebrating Native American Heritage Month and talk to students and mixed, younger kids all the way up to junior high kids. I've had a chance to interact with, and they've got a lot of. They've got mosaics on the floor. They've got a couple of Native teachers there, but out of 550 so kids in the Buffalo School District, only 80 of them actually go to this magnet school, and it's unfortunate because I think if more Native students, especially when they enter the Buffalo School District, as whether they move to the city or new transplants or whatever, I think if more of them knew that there was a specific Native magnet school, that they would probably take it up and feel they should come out of that school experience with perhaps a little better understanding of Native issues than just the general New York State curriculum, and I think that's the plan. I think that's the hope. I'm not sure that hope has been fully realized, and not because of the good work of the people who are trying to provide that. Oftentimes, it's related to budgets and grant funding and matching funding from states, matching funding from school districts, and all kinds of other things. Tomorrow night is the Native American Parent Student Committee. This committee actually controls a certain amount of the federal funding that goes into the Native American program in the Buffalo School District. And they're having their annual meeting, their 2017-18 school year election and meeting, and that's tomorrow. Let's see. So it's Tuesday, June 13th, from 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. and it's at the Moose Lodge, number 8. That's at 717 Tonawanda Street, Buffalo, New York. Look, people are encouraged to participate, and it's a good chance to get out there and just meet the folks and meet some of the people who are involved in not just this magnet school, but in trying to develop a little bit more of a specific Native program to the Buffalo School District. And I encourage people to everybody's welcome. They're suggesting a dish to pass, and there are some open positions that are up for election: chairperson, co-chairperson, treasurer, secretary, sergeant at arms. I didn't even know they had a sergeant at arms. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but I'll have to look that up one day. But anyway, so that's it. Native American Parent Student Committee. It's the 2017-18 school year elections, and it's a social event too. So by all means, if you get a chance, if you got students, if you got young people and under your care, and you live in the city of Buffalo, and especially if you're Native parents or Native kids, this is an opportunity for you to learn probably a little bit more about the program, and maybe even reconsider which public school in the city of Buffalo your kids go to. So there you have it. But yeah, it was neat to go there and have a conversation about what Native education should look at. One of the things they were talking about was the idea of bringing more Native culture into the education, into the social studies programs, and that kind of stuff. Trying to I can't remember the word, merge, I guess, and I had to raise the question. I said, if some of it isn't just about merging Native culture and history into the social studies program, but correcting what is already in there. I mean, Matt, this is one of the things that we've talked about before. There's just so many. There are so many things that are introduced to our kids at early ages that is just completely inaccurate. In fact, one of the last times I was at School 19 and spoke to the kids, I asked them if they could crack open their textbook, and they're still telling the story about Pocahontas. This is a completely made up story, that Pocahontas saved John Smith's life, that they were going to bash his head or cut off his head or something like that, and she laid herself across his back to save it, which is completely fabricated. I mean, it is, and the fact that textbooks were not just teaching this stuff when I was, in 4th grade or 3rd grade or something like that. The fact that they're still doing it today, because it was a long, long time ago when I was in 3rd grade. That's my point. I mean, the fact that they're still doing this stuff is just, it's amazing. It's amazing to me that there has not been a course correction in any of this stuff. I mean, they still, it's still the whole Christopher Columbus thing. They either leave things out or completely mischaracterize elements of American history. especially as it relates to Native people. And of course, Native people have never had the opportunity to step up at the state level. I think in Buffalo they may have, but at the state level, to insist on some changes to the state-bound curriculum associated with Native education. And of course, that's part of the problem. I mean, and as long as people are going to continue to mischaracterize history, there's a cost associated with that. And the cost is that you perpetuate a certain level of racism. You perpetuate a completely false narrative about who Native people are, what our relationship is with the United States or Canada or anybody else. And because you've never laid the proper foundation as to that relationship from 500 years ago, 300 years ago, 200 years ago, or 100 years ago. So, and I think that's part of the issue. Hey, I do want to say again that we are simulcasting on the Gway. That's 92.3 FM in Tandanega. We do have a phone line that if you want to join us on the show, maybe we strike a nerve with something we say, or maybe you're pleased with something we've said. But you can join us and you can call 855-967-0463. That's the number to call. And when you make that call, and I feel not only do I feel obligated or obliged to tell you this, but in a way it's a privilege for me to tell you this. But when you make that phone call, you're actually going to call the Gway. You're going to call CKWE in Tandanega. They are actually providing us with the phone. So if you want to participate in this program, you simply call CKWE and Darren Doreen will patch you in, and you can join us in the conversation. Here's what I wanted to talk about today, though. I always have these conversations about a variety of issues, some Native, predominantly Native, but they're all over the map. And because I address so many various issues, there are always going to be those people who suggest that some of the issues are less important than the others. One of the issues that I have, I'm certainly not the champion of the issue, but it's one that I've addressed here locally in our battles with one of the local schools in the Buffalo School District, or the Buffalo area, I should say, Lancaster, New York. And I've engaged in this conversation over the Washington football team and other schools. It's the mascot issue. I mean, I have weighed in on it, and I've written some columns for some newspapers, and I've spoken at a couple of school board meetings, both here locally and frankly all the way down into Delaware. And I think the mascot issue is a valid issue to dedicate some airtime to. Dedicate some column inches to, but to have a conversation over. And when I hear somebody say, that's not a very big issue. All right, well, maybe you haven't prioritized that issue very high or highly, but you shouldn't be criticizing anybody else who does. And so the expression that I get hit with invariably is, we've got bigger fish to fry. All right. Then go fry your fish. That's my attitude on this thing, because there are some issues that relate to a lot of other issues. Excuse me. Excuse me. And the mascot issue is one of those issues that I think it affects our kids. It emboldens certain views towards Native people, including dehumanizing people. It is for entertainment. I mean, I've listened to a show on NPR, one of the NPR shows, or BUR Boston shows, about some kids being criticized for somehow making light, and I say kids, but they're college students, making light of something to do with the Jewish Holocaust. And they were severely reprimanded, and I think they either had their admissions canceled or got suspended from, and this is a college. And yet, when somebody puts a banner up that says "Get ready for the Trail of Tears," like when I think University of Oklahoma or something was playing Colorado or something like that, there was some expression. They're playing Seminoles, the Florida State Seminoles or something. They put up a big banner, and what do? They apologize for it later because, of course, College Game Day puts it on and all that other stuff. ESPN. So there's a double standard. And the reason I bring this stuff up is because it does affect the way Native people and Native issues are viewed. If you cartoon who we are, that ends up being the view that the dominant society has for us. So when I hear somebody say, that's not a very big issue. We've got issues associated with health care and drug addiction and clean water. And, where I come back to is, well, don't you think that it's possible that the fact that the U.S. Capitol has a $1 billion sports franchise with a Native slur for its name, you don't think that there's any connection between that use of a derogatory expression and the cartooning of who we are and the dehumanization of who we are, that there's not some connection, or at very least that it isn't the perfect symbol or symbolism for the way Washington and the country at large views Native people?
That becomes almost like the standard for what people recognize Native people as being. I mean, how many times you hear, I thought there wasn't any Native Americans left. I thought they all got killed off. There's all these, what do you call them?
Myths, I guess.
Yeah, stereotypes, that we get perpetuated in.
Yeah, Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz and Dina Whitaker, Dina Whitaker, she's got they got a book out that says 20 all the real Indians died off and 20 other myths about Native Americans. I mean, not just but other people have experienced, including my good friend Greg Deal, who's experienced where somebody's done something inappropriate, like doing a war whoop or something like that. They said, "Why'd you do that?" He says, "Oh no, it's no big deal. I'm a Redskins fan." Like when somebody approaches a Native person and says, "Oh yeah, my favorite football team is the Washington." Why would you think you telling me that? So even as you recognize
some of my best friends are Redskins.
Yeah, some of my Redskins. Some of my best friends are Redskins fans. I guess that makes it all better then. I mean, so my point is, there are a lot of issues. Oh yeah, there we go. there are a lot of issues that that we deal with, and not every one of them is fought at the same level at the same time. Look, the mascot issue is one that allows us to get some national attention on Native issues, and it's on us to take that issue and turn that mascot debate into a larger debate about the unique racism that Native people experience, and we do experience it. And for anybody who thinks that Native people have not been subject to racism, you're just not paying attention. And the fact that these mascots exist, and again, I go back to my standard, and my standard answer about this thing is anybody who suggests that using Savage or Redskin or Indian or Warriors as your mascot is a tribute to us, it's simply not. It's a lie. And the fact that you would say such a thing and that it's meant to honor us, if it was meant to honor us, then at the very time that your school, whether it's 60, 70, 80, 100 years ago, decided to do that there were kids being kidnapped from their homes, taken to residential schools, and beaten for trying to maintain their Native identity. If you think you capturing our identity and using it for a mascot honors us, while at the same time our aunts and uncles and grandparents were being beaten for speaking the language, and they had their hair chopped off, their clothes burned in piles, and they're put in military uniforms or housemaid uniforms, and just completely whitewashed. So this is, it's absurd, and there's a history here. So when I hear, especially one of these guys who's, "Oh yeah, well, I'm an activist. I fight for the important stuff." Anybody who says that is really saying what you're fighting for is unimportant. What you're doing is meaningless. Look, I know there are some Native people who say, "No, I'm fine with the whole Washington Redskins thing." Well, then that's fine that you're fine with it. Then shut up and go do something. We don't need to hear from you. But for the people who do understand the impact that something like this has, don't diminish their work. Don't get in their way, and don't minimize the effort that people put in, because there has been effort put into this. There has been psychological reviews of this stuff. You can see it. I mean, there are the existence of these things violate many state laws, bullying laws, and anti-discrimination laws. I mean, the United States is part of UN conventions that are supposed to reject and oppose all forms of racial discrimination. And yet the United States Capitol has $1 billion sports franchise with a racial slur as a name. And anybody who can't see, I know part of the argument. We don't mean, we don't think Redskins is a racial slur. Well, look, it's a compound word, red and skin. The fact that you've minimized an entire group of people, indigenous people, who predate your existence, and reduced them down to naming what you think is the color of our skin, that by definition is discrimination. That's reducing somebody to something almost inhuman, and that's the whole point. So, what I don't get offended when somebody decides they're going to devote all of their attention to one one issue. In fact, that's great, because sometimes issues do need undivided attention. Not everybody can spread their resources. But when I hear somebody say, well, I don't have time for that. Well, then fine. Then what did you weigh in for? Why did you take so much time out of your busy day to weigh in and say, oh, I got bigger fish to fry? Then go fry your fish, like I said. Do something else. But I take offense. I don't care if you're native or non-native. And again, I don't care if you're, 2 blocks down the down the road here, or half a mile down the road, or if you're in Lakota territory or wherever you are. If you feel that you've got to somehow make the argument that an issue that other people are trying to address, because they know that it has racial implications, if you want to spend all this Facebook time diminishing and trying to insult somebody for picking up that mantle, then you can't expect any of us to take you seriously about the things that you claim to be fighting for, because now you're fighting us. It's kind of like those crazy guys. They remember when Lancaster they brought in Mike Milk or Joe Milk or what?
I think it was Joe Milk.
Joe Milk brings in a guy who is native, supposedly, and is a Washington football fan. So white people from Lancaster fly in him and this other guy who was an absolute imposter. It looked like he was wearing a wig. They bring in these two guys who claim to be native, and they're supposed to, their presence, the fact that these people exist, that you can find some native people who like the Washington football team, that somehow negates the fact
that's their justification.
Yeah, like it's going to validate their claims. I mean, that's, I don't know.
And they didn't even have that much to say either.
Nothing pertinent. No. I mean, and in fact, I addressed
other than their dedication to the team. We love the team. Yeah, but it doesn't bother me.
We love football.
Yeah.
Well, great. We're happy for you. And that's kind of what we. That's the challenge with all this stuff. I mean, is dealing with people who want to minimize. I mean, I have a specific view about how to address certain issues. I mean, the Dakota Access Pipeline issue. I mean, I didn't agree with certain things that I heard out of there. But you know what? I was still fully supported the idea of opposing that pipeline. I wasn't going to say, oh yeah, that pipeline's not important. And then taking a cue from my friend Paul, I do believe that there are issues that we can't impact. And again, I may feel terrible about blood diamonds. I may feel terrible about poverty in Bangladesh. I may feel terrible about the refugee crisis out of Syria or the terrorism in Somalia. But you know what? There's not a whole lot that I'm going to do living here on the Cattaraugus territory, Cattaraugus territory of Seneca Nation, to impact those issues, half a globe away. I pay attention to that stuff. I mean, I give it my due consideration, and I might even weigh in on the issues from time to time. But again, this isn't about bigger fish to fry, but the things that I can impact. I can speak intelligently about the mascot issue, so I do. I can speak out about other issues. I mean, me going to Buffalo to attend a meeting, I want to offer my voice. Why? Because I talk a lot. Because I've got a big mouth, and I'm not afraid to use it, and I'm not afraid to back it up either. So, I mean, the point is,
it shouldn't matter what size your fish is. They're all parts of the puzzle. It's all oppression.
Yep.
They're all talking us down one way or the other. But hey, if you can knock off a couple of those smaller ones, it gives you even more time to pay attention to the bigger issues. I mean, yeah, you're just picking away on little pieces of it, but these big ones they'll have their time as well. It's not like you're 100% just on the mascot issue.
Yeah, it's not like you're gonna throw out the baby with the bathwater every time you address an issue. And again, my point with it is there are ways to connect the issues. And so whether you're talking about environmental issues or social justice or climate racism, I mean there's all kinds of environmental racism, they call it. I mean, there are all kinds of ways of connecting some of these dots. And like I said, if you dehumanize people, if you minimize somebody to a decal on a football helmet, it's much easier to ignore the situation. I mean, I've been listening to some of the radio programs talking about heading out to Erie, PA, area that voted strongly for Donald Trump. And now they're finding out that Trump's going to cut $300 million out of the Great Lakes Fund. That's going to affect their tourism, their wine industry, their lakefront. I mean, and now how do you not? If you don't understand that there are issues that come back, and that there's a way to connect those things environmentally, how you deal with politics at the local level, how you deal with all this stuff. And I know that this may seem like a broad brush, but everything is connected. And so, the fact that I'll pay attention to what's happening in New Zealand or Australia or Tasmania, the reason it's worth hearing that is because at some point, some issue that's been addressed becomes an issue that we have to address. One of the things that I do in New York is I show films each month. The film that I'm going to show at the end of this month is Acts of Defiance. It's a film about the Oka crisis and what they call the summer of the Mohawk crisis of 1990. The reason I think seeing that film today is because now all over the globe, people are talking about resisting, the governmental norms and all that other stuff. So why not take a look at what's been done in the past and not a long time ago? I mean, 1990 isn't that long ago for many of us, and I think understanding what resistance and acts of defiance really are.
That was an act of resistance. That wasn't just putting up a stand. I mean, they stood their ground.
Yeah, and I think understanding what resistance can look like, and I'm not saying should look like. I mean, I'm not saying the same levels of resistance are going to work all the time, but I think that's why we've got to connect these issues, and we'll talk about it a little bit more when we come back. I got a couple other things I want to hit on too, but we'll do that after the break. Bottom of the hour here, we'll go out. What are we going to go out with here?
Frank Juan, what makes the red man red?
All right, I don't know what does that. Okay, all right, we'll go out. We'll be right back.
Supposed to see the Aborigines and the Indians too. And the Indians too. This should be most enlightening.
What makes the red man red? Teach 'em all about red man. What made the red man red? 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 Teach 'em all about red man. Red man.
Your history books, your holidays, Thanksgiving lies and Columbus Day. Tell me what I know more than the teacher. Tell me what I know more than the preacher. Tell me why you think the red man is red, stained with the blood from the land he bled. Tell me why you think the red man is dead, with a fake headdress on your head. Tell me what you know about thousands of nations displaced and confined to concentration camps called reservations. We died for the birth of your nation. Hollywood portrays us wrong. History books say we're gone. Your God in church say we're wrong. We're from the earth, it made us strong.
On many moons, red man played pale-faced.
Savages? Like savages?
Savages as savage does. The white man came and ravaged us. Caused genocide. Look in my eyes and tell me who you think the savage was.
Savages? Savages?
Indian celebration continued late into the night.
All right. Thanks for coming back. That's Frank Wan and What Makes the Red Man Red. Hey, look, our sponsors for Let's Talk Native are Ross and Holly John with the RJE family of businesses, Eric White and ERW Enterprises. Individuals who contribute to the show on a fairly regular basis are guys like my good friend Ed Schindler, who sits in studio with us, Tracy Brown, Cynthia Trice, Scott Snyder, Neville Spring, and my good friend Sugar Montour, and many others who have helped in the past also. I've got to give my props out to those guys because you've enabled us to get to our 8th year of broadcasting. 8 years we've been able to, or we're coming into 8 years, we've been able to continue to educate, entertain, and inform people. And, that's what we do. I mean, we do a little bit of the entertaining, but for the most part, we try to have an intelligent conversation, maybe voicing some opinions that are not widely held. I mean, I know, Matt, you had a post the other day, said something about, you had some opinions that might not be popular. And I dare say that we oftentimes take a view or express a view here that may not be the widely held view. Although I will say that I've seen some people change, and I've seen people come around to understanding, oh, that's what you mean by that. Mm-hmm. We didn't know that, or I didn't understand that part of American history or Native history, or that part of the culture. I didn't know what that expression meant, or I didn't know we had an expression for that. So that's what we do here. And so the fact that we do have sponsors that help us do this and help, give us a guy like Jake Proud, who's going to, help us expand this YouTube channel and do more with what we're doing here on the radio shows. Provide us with the equipment that we need and sometimes, help us, do events and that kind of stuff. I know some of the very sponsors that help the show help sponsor the event that you hosted here on the Removing the Dust event. And
thanks to them. Yeah,
I mean, and that's where community comes in, because you need to have that for us to continue this work. I mean, I consider myself more of an educator at this stage of my life than a fighter.
That's a lot of just making people aware is education.
Yeah.
They hear you say something and you say, "Well, what the hell do you mean by that?" You might say something profound, but you sit there and you explain it.
Well, I mean, a perfect example. I mean, I mentioned I had a little interaction with somebody. Somebody posted a video on Facebook, and it was a video. And so she commented to me. She said, "You commented on me, and I think you insulted me." And I'm thinking, I'm scratching my head trying to think, you're gonna have to refresh my memory. I don't know what you're talking about. And she posted a video about, it was a snail or a slug creeping, or however you define. I said walk.
You said walking. I said, earlier.
Yeah, the slug walking.
A slug walks into a bar.
Yeah. But it walks up. No, it slinks up or whatever it does to a dandelion plant and eats 3 leaves or so off of the dandelion, and then doesn't devour the whole thing. It eats 3 leaves, and there's 3 or 4 perfectly good leaves left there, and then it turns around and it walks or whatever, slinks. It slugs along and walks off.
Slugs away.
And I looked at that video and I'm thinking, that's pretty cool. I said, look at that. Even a slug knows not to devour and to consume the whole thing. That it can come back and
they're not that big, John. He's probably full.
Come on, I was giving slug credit now because
I don't think they're big philosophers or anything like that.
But still, the slug didn't eat the whole thing. I fully expected that slug to devour that whole plant, and it didn't. And it walked around and said, "Look at that! Even a slug has enough sense not to eat the whole thing." And I said, "Congratulations, man! You've now reduced your intelligence to below a slug." And so the woman who posted the thing, she had commented, she thought I insulted. I said, "No, I wasn't insulting you. I was impressed that the slug didn't eat it all, and I was just saying that man, in its lust for consumption, doesn't seem to have the same sense that the slug does. But again, that's the kind of stuff that, because we can have a conversation. What might have offended somebody, and she thought I insulted her first, but once having a conversation, she realized, oh, okay, now I understand what you mean. And that's what I'm saying about what this show does, because we can present a topic and uncover something, remove some dust from something that maybe people either overlooked or never gave the subject enough thought to say, wow, that's pretty profound.
Well, that's why we have discussions here. I mean, some radio personalities have arguments.
Yeah.
And, what do they say about discussions and arguments? A discussion is to determine what's right, and an argument is to determine who's right.
Yeah, right. And my whole point is, people don't have to agree with the views that we express here, but let's have a conversation.
Yep.
And understand that the view exists.
Yeah, maybe you don't see it right. Explain it to her. What does it mean then?
And I want to know what that other view is. So and although I spent the first half hour talking about somebody who expressed a view saying there are bigger fish to fry, in other words, he was condemning the idea of sweating an issue that he didn't feel warranted that level of attention. Well, all right, then don't you give it the attention. But and I'm not saying he's wrong for prioritizing things differently. Where I was concerned was his condemnation or dismissiveness towards somebody else's issue. That's the whole issue. Hey, look, I want to remind people we are simulcasting on the Gway, and that's 92.3 on the FM dial in Tyendinaga in Ontario. And if you're not in that area, you can give a call and participate in this show. You can call up the Gway, and their number, which will patch you into this show, is 855-967-0463. We got it featured prominently on the front of our laptop here. So if you're watching us on Facebook Live, you can see that.
So and get the light on.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't turn the light on this time. I wonder why that was. Okay, all right. I guess we're trying to keep it cool in here. Hey, look, I want to not only thank the sponsors, but I want to thank the other folks who help get our show out there. I want to thank Unity Stream and Apache Net Radio for providing streaming service and for helping us to build our LTN radio network. I want to thank the Gway, obviously, CKWE, for their simulcast and the rebroadcast. I want to thank Netroots Radio, Real People's Media, and Indigenous Resistance Radio, and all of you who share, because I know a lot of you do this. There are a fair number of people that will see the video and they share it, or they, frankly, even by commenting on it, it reposts the video onto your pages. So, and we're getting over 1,000 views per show. We're still trying to build up that YouTube channel. So I encourage people that if you do follow us on Facebook, do take a look at, and you can't just put LTN TV. You got to look it up. It's Let's Talk Native TV. And I'm going to feature links to it periodically to remind people. But I'd like to see us, get us a fairly substantial subscriber list. And when you subscribe to the channel, you'll get alerts anytime we post something new. So that's the value in doing so. So look, one thing I want to mention is I sent away for a Mevo. If you don't know what a Mevo is, it's a camera that is specifically designed for streaming on a couple of these platforms: live stream, Periscope, and Facebook Live. So we're going to see if we can't improve the quality of the video that we do here. I'm going to take it to New York with me and stream the show down there as well. And it's portable enough that we can take it anywhere. So this allows us to not only get a better video, but you can actually zoom in on whoever's talking and probably get it. You can edit on the fly is the whole point. So this is kind of a new thing. We may fumble with it at first, but I'm gonna put it in.
As long as it doesn't make my head look too big, I don't care.
Well, I can't guarantee that. Your head's pretty big.
No promises.
I'm gonna put it in the trusting hands of Jake Proud for the most part. So I'm not saying that to blame him if it goes wrong. I'm just saying that we'll figure it out. We'll work on it together. So. So I do look forward to that, because I think we will improve the quality of our streaming video. And we'll, and obviously, the better that video is, the more we can pull off of it for as we capture and create, through post production, other video shorts and that kind of stuff. So look for that, and we should be getting that in within the next week. And hopefully by next week we'll debut our Facebook live stream off of our Mevo device. We'll see. Hey, look, one of the other things I wanted to write down, somebody had asked me, before we went live last week, we played some of Jamaica Osorio's a poem about Hawaii. Matt, we play that from time to time. And they asked who was this fantastic Hawaiian person. So her name is Jamaica Osorio. She actually won one of the HBO deaf poetry competitions, or was featured on it anyway. I don't know if it was a competition, but she was featured on HBO with that poem. But she's done some great stuff, and she's still very active. Her father was a Hawaiian national activist, and she's following in his footsteps. And you can look her up. It's Jamaica, just like the place, Jamaica.
Very powerful piece that she did. I was impressed the first time I heard it too. That's a really good piece.
Yeah, she's she's pretty remarkable, and obviously she's got some language skills. She can sing some of the Hawaiian songs. She incorporates some of that into her poetry sometimes. Powerful and impressive young lady, I will say, and I encourage you to take a look at her work. Hey, one of the other things I want to mention. Time goes so fast. There's an issue that is getting some attention, and it's been getting more attention over the last year. But I think we must be at an anniversary of a case called U.S. versus Loving. Do you know this case?
No.
This is a case where when it was still illegal for interracial marriages in some states like Virginia. So this guy Loving marries his high school or his youthful or teenage sweetheart or whatever, who happens to be black. Actually, she was part native too, but marries. Of course, Virginia. If they could characterize you as black instead of native, they would do that because they wanted us to disappear completely. But they outlawed. It was illegal for interracial marriage in Virginia. So these two went to Washington D.C. They got married and went back home, and then the cops came busting in their door and arrested them. They were charged with a felony for. Again, this was considered, I don't even know what the actual charge was, but so the case goes along, and again, a white man, a black woman, and they beat the charge, and it ends up really creating a whole new standard for what was legal and not legal, and it's part of the basis for gay marriage and a whole lot of other things. But here's the interesting thing. And I think this is, again, when we talk about the unique racism, this is where I think a conversation has never taken place. When you consider the outlawing of interracial marriages between black people and white people, even in 1950, yet the intermarrying with Native people was not only allowed, but it was encouraged. And there's a difference here.
Yep.
And here's the difference. Because they wanted something from us. So in the case of the Osage, they wanted money. They wanted, frankly, they didn't care about the people. Even the white people marrying the Native people didn't care about we just want your money and we'll murder you afterwards. But the reason that intermarrying was encouraged right back to Jefferson's time was that it was a way to make us disappear. It was a way to eliminate us. Because that's a completely different mindset. So marrying a Native person, if you were white, marrying a Native person was not illegal. Even though marrying a black person was. So there's and I think this is a discussion that nobody has ever had. And maybe I'll even do this on the radio in New York as well. Because wrap your head around that a little bit. The fact that you would want to eliminate a people by a whole different way of ethnic cleansing, right? We'll just thin their bloodline, and yet you at the same time you would not want to create. I don't know. You wouldn't want to. You don't want to do that with black people. I mean, it's an insane way of viewing life and obviously human relationships and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's bizarre. So as I'm listening to several radio programs as of late, and a couple of, I think there's a book and magazine, a couple of magazine articles, a couple of new books out about this Loving case. It is, I don't know that anybody is broaching that subject. And of course, here's the other thing. Keep in mind, I think that this would be a different case. I don't know that they would have been successful. Now, this couple, they weren't like an affluent, they weren't activists. They were just people who had a relationship. But I wonder how bad this would have gone if this case were a black man and a white woman. So, again, the white privilege that is associated with a white man, I think probably impacted even the outcome of this case. With a white man and a black woman, I think this was something that was probably gave them a better shot as a test case, as this case would prove out. But I guarantee if it was a black man and a white woman, I don't know that they would have had success, in this, what would essentially be, I think it was the Supreme Court case when all was said and done. But, again, the part that so beyond the whole, male dominance thing, which I think is a factor that, again, those people who are writing about this story and I'm hearing all these radio interviews, they stay away from that. They never address how it might have gone the other way if it were a black man and a white woman. But they also never talk about that, how different it was, considering the way Native people were, and how the government even, and I mean government officials, congressmen, senators, again, Thomas Jefferson, right back through, where, even as Native people were looked down upon, if we can't kill them, then let's just water them down. And especially because, when it came to, again, a white man taking a Native wife, there was always this, the fact that I said it that way, taking a Native wife, because that's the way, marriage was treated so much for so long in the U.S. system as a possession. A woman was a possession. So yeah, it's okay. A white man can take
It's even in the vows, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, having to hold, right? But no, I just wanted to mention that, and maybe this is, it just kind of occurred to me today, so I haven't even really fully expanded the thought on this thing, but I know because of so much that I've read, and I'm not just talking about Killers of the Flower Moon, the David Grand book on the murders of the Osage, but I've seen it throughout history, and I know we've all seen the examples of the idea of assimilating Native people. There was never the effort, the whole idea of segregation. Black people were treated different. The racism towards black people, and I'm not saying ours was better or theirs was better, but I'm just saying that it's different. And the fact is that the reason that intermarrying with Native people was encouraged was to make us disappear. And I think that it was actually a genocidal thought process that that the state and federal officials and nation planners had in their mind. And it's even worse in many ways. I mean, especially when you consider what happened with the Osage. But so the whole idea that you could, an example of this is, and this was brought up a couple of times, there are places that when a white man married a Native woman, he would have rights within those territories. He could vote in referenda. I mean, there was, so the idea of empowering a white man who would marry into a Native territory, so you could change, literally, no pun intended, the complexion of a Native people. I mean, and the Indian Act in Canada, that's what this was all about. Mm-hmm. So a man could gain rights within a Native territory simply by marrying in. And and so this is this is part of that craziness, So I don't know. It's twisted. It's twisted, the whole idea of trying to manipulate people and and trying to, again, ethnically cleanse. This is kind of the difference between the racism towards black people. Black people in the United States were not victims of genocide. They were victims of all kinds of other atrocities. But especially during the slave period, no, they were dehumanized to the point of being chattel, that they were simply possessions. They were beasts of burden. I mean, which is, it's terrible on every level. But it's the difference between what Native people experienced is that they were trying to eliminate us. They wanted us gone. So whether they did it through mass executions like Mankato, or massacres, or disease, forced marches, starvation, whatever, again, assimilation policies in residential schools, and then ultimately even this intermarrying stuff. I mean, it is really kind of an incredible distinction. And again, I don't want for a second people to think that I am saying that the racism against Native people is worse than the racism against black people. I just think that it's important that people understand the distinction between, because when we get into subjects like the Washington football team, that's an example of systemic racism at a level that even people of color can't necessarily appreciate. My good friend Nolan Hack, posted the roster of black players on the Washington football team who were not forced to go there. They literally, tried out for the team, and seem to be oblivious to the fact that there's a racist name. And we have the conversation. I mean, the conversation that I offer up is, would a black man play for a team called the Aryans? I don't know. Maybe. Would he play for a team called the Niggers? I don't know that either. I mean, or would anybody play for a team called the Niggers or the Spics, or any, or what are the other names on my list here? Towelhead, I don't know, there's all kinds of chink. I mean, these are all these racial slurs that everybody knows is inappropriate. What about Aryans? And that's where I come back to. Who would play for that football team besides Aryans? I guess skinheads, I guess. And you can't just say, well, they're just words and they don't matter. No, words matter. And I think this is the conversation that needs to be had, because there is a difference. There's a difference on how, I mean, you can't necessarily compare the feminism movement or the movement for gay rights or immigrant rights or civil rights for black people or or the ongoing struggle for distinction and autonomy that Native people go through. They aren't the same. Now, there's places that they all overlap. There are basic human rights issues that I think connect these things. And frankly, I think that we should stand with each other on all of these issues. I honestly do. I don't think you can say I'm being mistreated and then go along with being a part of the party that mistreats others. I think that's inconsistent. And frankly, I don't think you can make that case. So if you're going to cry out over social justice issues, then you can't pretend that the social justice issues that don't affect you directly, that you can be on the wrong side of those issues and make a compelling argument for your case. If you've got to be on the right side of social justice issues on all of them. Now, I'm not saying you got to be a strong advocate for every social justice issue, and I'm not saying that we have to fight every one of those battles. But I don't think you can be a strong opponent to social justice issues on those other fights and then say, "Oh, but I'm the victim on this one." That's my whole point. Because I know there's a lot of people who are indifferent about things like housing refugees. There are people that are still indifferent over gay rights and that kind of stuff. I know that not everybody has as open a view on these issues as I do, but at very least, and this is what I say to the guy who says, well, there's bigger fish to fry, then go fry them and stay out of this conversation. Fight for the things that you want to fight for, but don't fight those of us who are fighting some of these other causes.
We may have different talents or specialties that would help. I mean, that's diversity. I mean, diversity even amongst ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we might have a skill set that somebody else doesn't have, and we can fine tune it to that particular fight. As long as you're fighting, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? We got to have resistance on all fronts.
Right, and I think that you make a good point. I mean, we use the word fight, and some, maybe that gets lost in a little bit in translation. But I think we have to resist injustices, whatever that resistance looked like. And obviously, that resistance can look like a prayer circle for some people, but it may look like acts of defiance, like the Mohawks in 1990.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not going to condemn the prayer circle, because at least somebody got off their duffs to do something that's visual. Whether it has the spiritual significance, that it is intended to have or not. I mean, but at least I don't. Again, I'm not going to dog people for how they choose to resist, but you're right, Matt. There are people that have different skill sets. There are different talents, and we all bring something. Some of us are singers, and some of us are dancers, and some of us are talkers. And you know what? Some of us are fighters. So I think when you look for those skill sets, you want to make sure that you have a good a good cross section of skill sets, because ultimately you also need diplomats. You need the people who are going to be able to resolve conflict, not just stand up to injustice. Because standing up to injustice, resistance by itself doesn't solve the problem. Solutions solve the problem. You can't solve a conflict by ratcheting up the conflict without ever backing it down. Even if there does seem to be a need to step up the conflict, you have to be prepared to back it down to get it back to a peaceful place at some point. That's where diplomacy, and that's where intelligence and you know what, care and respect come in. At the end of the day, you can't fight hate with more hate. You can only fight hate with a little bit more caring, and that's where we come down to. All right, hey, I'm in New York this week, so you can tune me in on WBAI.org if you're looking for us online. That's Thursday morning from 10 till noon, 2-hour show. I'll be taking a lot of calls, so if you want to listen to a show that has a lot of diverse voices, then tune in Let's Talk with John Kane on WBAI in New York City on Thursday morning from 10 till noon. We'll probably take, maybe 10 or 20 calls that in that 2-hour segment. So join me and Shawnee Rice in New York City on via Facebook's live stream, or and I will stream that on my show or on my page, Let's Talk with John Kane, and maybe I'll try to share it over my Let's Talk Native. If not, hey, if you're in the city, you can tune us in. We're in the middle of the FM dial, 99.5 on WBAI, and of course we'll be back here on Friday. Yahweh, thanks for listening.
Yeah.